All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you would take your seats, we're going to get started. However, I know I just said take your seats, but let's stand for the pledge and then we'll take our seats. Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we can sing. All right, well, good morning. So glad to see such a great crowd today. That's really wonderful news. The purpose of our workshop today is to ensure that our current disaster planning information is effectively distributed to the President's board members and POCs. We're aiming to motivate the individual association boards to develop specific disaster plans tailored to their communities and then to disseminate that information onto their residents. The workshop also seeks to provide recommendations for proactive measures before, during, and after a storm. And furthermore, it serves to educate residents on existing disaster procedures within Kings Point, including the responsibilities of each of the governing entities. Regarding those entities, I would like to take a moment to note, I do think it's important that this committee is made up of members from the Master, Federation, COA, First Service, and VESTA, and they have all played a pivotal role in this committee. Everything that you see in today's presentation is a result of all the hard work and effort put in by this group collaboratively. So thank you guys for putting all of this together. We do have a workbook that you all received, and we'll get started on that shortly. But before we do, we have a couple of speakers, and we will start with the chair of the Disaster Planning Committee, Ms. Marianne Meeker.
Thank you, Shayla. I am thrilled as usual. We have a lot of people here and we can get a lot of information out, and it's very important information. In addition, when we finish, we do have some extra workbooks, whatever is first come, first serve, if you want to be able to give them to members of your board. The Disaster Planning Committee was established in 2018. Every year, the committee conducts many meetings prior to kickoff and gathers the most up-to-date information from all Hillsborough County emergency agencies, FEMA, lots of places. People know that we're out there now checking on what's going on when Pete Doxy actually gets things from the Weather Channel, what's going to happen weather-wise in the future. So we're out there looking at everything all the time to help protect all of you and your residents and your associations. Excuse me. In 2020, the Master Association created the Kings Point Disaster Planning website, and it's mentioned in the workbook that you have, and you can refer to that, print pages off of it, do whatever you need to do to help instruct your residents on what kinds of preparations they need to do. Anyone may go for a plethora of updated information to prepare for a disaster, especially hurricanes. And when we talk about disasters, we're not just talking about hurricanes. Flooding, we could talk about a chemical spill, a fire, it just goes on, and we want to make ourselves as readily as possible to be able to deal with anything like this in a 55-plus community. The committee itself is comprised of residents of Kings Point, most with firsthand knowledge and experience with the emergency system here in Hillsborough County. Some of the folks that are going to speak briefly will tell you about what they do and how they're tied in with all the things that happen within the county and within the state. We have Hillsborough County reps, we have community leaders from the Master Association, Federation, First Service, Residential, and Vesta. Let me tell you who the members of the 2024 Disaster Planning Committee are. Jim Allen, who is sitting to my left, is the Oversight Director for the actual Disaster Planning Committee. I'm the committee chair, and I've had lots of experience with emergencies. So Mike Bardell, the chief of the Sun City Center Emergency Squad, is at the table. Shirley Bardell is representing the Federation Board. Shauna is the Master General Manager and our committee's consultant. First Service Residential General Manager is Debbie Lauber. She's down the way here. Vesta Chief of Security is a committee consultant. Brian Burns is the Vice President of USI and does an integral part of helping prepare the insurance companies to understand our needs and produce rates that we can consider favorable considering other places around us. I mentioned Vesta. Chief of Security is Pete. We have other committee members. Sheila Houlihan is from the Emergency Squad. Eileen Pico is from the COA and Emergency Squad. George Cardelli is a former Master Director. And Community Communications is Shayla Johnson and Jennifer Von Luders, who works for Vesta. Okay, I'm gonna take it back over.
All right, our next speaker will be Jeff Mary.
Good morning. Deputy Jeff Mary, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. I have a lot of roles when it comes to hurricane prep, emergency management, and if a storm comes this way. So we'll start at the beginning. If Tampa or the Tampa Bay area, Hillsborough County, is put into the cone of probability, which is where it's gonna go, within 5 to 8 days out, we start emergency management procedures. I know last year we saw evacuations pretty early for the storm. So we monitor the storm, we prepare for any evacuations. If emergency management, Hillsborough County Emergency Management calls for evacuations, we assist with those evacuation routes so that you can travel out of here. Because if we evacuate all of Kings Point, you basically have 2 points to get out of here and then only one way to get onto the freeway. It's bad enough at 8 o'clock every other morning. So we'll help with those evacuation routes. We'll help manage people out. Are we coming to your home and kicking you out when there's evacuation? No, we don't have the manpower to do so. But please, if it's a mandatory evacuation, if you're in that zone, please vacate. The issue is when we have to come back and clean up. All right, we know half the people want to leave, the other half of people want to stay. We had people that stayed in the evacuation zone during last year's storm down Shell Point Road and some of the very low-lying areas of Ruskin that they were stuck in their homes for a day and a half. So they went without power, they went without water, they went without some services. So if you are in an evacuation zone, don't take that lightly. Evacuate. So we help with the evacuations, the evacuation routes. We continue to manage and look at the storm. Right about 4 days out, we will go ahead and establish the Sun City Center South Shore Command, which is over on Community Association property. And from there, we look at the storm, and as it's coming in, we will tell agencies and all of the volunteer organizations and everybody kind of what to do. We take an assessment. Okay, where are you? What time are you sending your employees home? What time are you closing down the clubhouses? We tell basically Pete Doxey what time to send his people home based on what's going on. Last year we had it, or year before, we thought they were going to go home about 2 hours later than we actually sent them home, but just based on the way the storm was kicking up, we told them to go ahead and send everybody home. Tell them, all right, you might want to send your employees home by A, B, or C. This is when the roads will start being shut down. At 35, once the sustained winds are 35 miles an hour or higher, there are no more emergency services whatsoever. Fire rescue doesn't respond, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office doesn't respond. So anybody that's in their home, anybody that's out on the street, they're going to get no emergency services until those winds go back down under a sustained 35 miles an hour. All of our deputies will go to the command post over in Sun City Center on North Pebble Beach. They were there last year and they watched an awning of one of the buildings get ripped off and thrown down the street and scattered all down Pebble Beach Boulevard. That's why they're not out there. At 35 miles an hour, it'll topple our vehicles. So understand that during that time, you're going to be without emergency services. Once that wind gets back below 35 miles an hour, we're going to go back out. The first thing that we do is we assess trees down, we assess power, we assess water. Do our assisted living facilities have, are their generators still running? You can ask Sean at First Light was like, hey, what do you have? What roads are closed? Have you deployed people out there to clear those roads? What traffic lights are down? What roads are impassable? And we get an assessment of the community, and then we start working to put everything back together. It was very difficult 2 years ago. Everybody wanted to go out and look at all the traffic lights that were down, and every single one of them on Sun City Center Boulevard was down. The biggest issue with that is it creates more calls of service for us. So we're out there, we're trying to get the lights repaired, we're trying to remove trees from the roadway, we're trying to get services to those people that needed them during the storm. Meanwhile, people are having accidents because they want to go out and look and there are no stoplights. We don't do well when stoplights are working, okay? I don't drive that great as it is. So when they're not working, you can just imagine. So now we're having to expend more deputies out there to mitigate those traffic crashes. So, the biggest thing is let everybody here assess the area before you start coming out, all right? Take care of your home, care and safety of your home, but let us assess. And understand that we all communicate through the command post at Sun City Center in North Pebble Beach pretty much every hour throughout the whole thing. We also have Sun City Center radio station with us, and we try to put stuff out on that continuously as long as they have power. Their generator was not working in the last storm, so they lost power for a couple hours. But we at the command will say, okay, Pebble Beach is impassable, Sun City Center Boulevard is impassable, 301 at 19th is impassable. So if you can listen to that, that would be a good place to get updates as we move through and then past the storm and then through cleanup. Okay, we've got this cleaned up. You can go to Walgreens, you can go to Walmart, and you can start to get out. So definitely something to listen to during the storm, and understand that it's actually worked pretty well. I mean, we can get better, but the last few storms we've done pretty well here in Sun City Center. I mean, we just seem to be blessed where it goes just a little north or south, or we get a little bit of wind, we get some rain, but beyond that, we don't seem to have a whole lot of issues. But again, all of that is taken care of, and it's taken right outside your door. So, and then if any questions or problems or concerns, they'll go through that command center and then go out, whether it's wellness checks, whether it's we need TECO trucks, whether we need county water, moving things out. We need barricades for roads that are closed, that type of stuff. Thank you. We'll hold them till the end. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Security Patrol.
I'm Bob Smith. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Security Patrol. And again, we are not interacting that frequently with Kings Point, except maybe at the Christmas tree lighting and a few things like that. We try and help out security. Main thing we have is manpower. We have 614 members in that. If we had a disaster as described like the hurricane, if we had 60 of them available for duty, that'd be wonderful. But the resources we have communication. We're a listening post on the DRS system that's housed headquarters, the base here at your amateur radio. So that's the fallback communication system. And so we participate in that. We have a generator. We maintain communication with our people, and we assist the sheriff right after the event in helping do the assessment within the CA community. Normally Tim Broad, the chief, and I are the ones who go out and make those street and identify assessments, lines down, etc. This last non-event was wonderful. Extra palms on north somewhere and south somewhere else, and that was about it. Very little real problems there, and that's wonderful. One of the things that we'll do is help patrol and all those observe and report, be a deterrent to looting after the fact, help identify problems as it goes, again, pretty well within our 19th down to the south part of Renaissance and between 301 and 75. So that's a pretty good sized little piece of turf. But we know that everybody's going to have concern. If the cell phones are gone, if the internet is down, people aren't going to be able to get in touch with you too easy. One of the biggest things we have, even after the non-events, is afterwards, all your friends and relatives are calling in to find out how you are. Imagine if they couldn't get in touch with you. And we still get some of those where we'll have to go out as a sheriff and the squad to some extent also to do these wellness checks. So make sure if you're staying and you're not staying in your house, tell your friends and families out of here that you're going to be over at Joe's or Sarah's house and their phone number and how to get in touch with them. Otherwise, we're going to your house and you're not there. Oh no, where are they? I guarantee you if it's a real event, the hospitals are not going to be well prepared to give immediate responses. So think a little bit about your own preparedness. But again, wellness checks, deterrent on the looting, those kind of things in the post situation is probably where we will spend most of our benefit to the community, I would say. So, and again, facilitating, if you've got those handheld little $15 radios, that's in part of that network. And I know y'all got at least 400 in Kings Point. Save that for the true emergency, and we will help relay those messages on to the proper authorities. Okay? So, again, just thinking ahead, there's a lot of good information in the book, but think and communicate with others. Communicate with others. Once you make a decision, that's great. If 4 days before you decide to change and leave, tell the people that you're leaving, all right? So people won't be looking for you. You don't want a big red X on your house when you come back, okay? So that's about all I can say as far as what our role is, might impact what you guys are involved in.
Actually, before we jump into the workbook, we have a little video for you to try to set the mood. All right, so as you can see, we're very lucky we have not had a direct hit, as some of the others have mentioned. Doesn't mean it's not coming for us one day. We certainly hope it doesn't, but the reason we're trying to do all this preparedness is to make sure, we're ready in the event of a storm and we can navigate that the best that we can. So jumping into the workbook here, we're going to start with why it's so important for associations to have a preparedness plan. Well, it's part of the association's duty to protect the well-being of their community and act in the best interest of their residents. Although having an emergency plan will certainly not save your community from being hit by a tropical storm or hurricane, it will assist your association and residents to be prepared when the time comes. Ultimately, having a plan will help minimize health, safety, and monetary risk for the entire community. So when we talk about the types of things that should be included in your emergency plan, well, every plan is going to require a chain of command, probably one of the most important parts of the plan. You'll need an organizational structure that informs you of who is in charge and what they're in charge of. The chart should have a leader that's usually fulfilled by the board president, but it could be assigned to another board member. The leader should serve as the first point of contact with the CAM. Your CAM at first service should closely follow there in second place as far as communication. And then another board member should also be appointed to be in charge of communicating with the association and utilizing their emergency contact list. You'll also need a good site plan overall for the whole association. That plan should highlight and label important areas of your neighborhood. That should include, but not limited to, your shutoff valves, lift stations, debris staging areas, and generators. Shutoff valves in particular should be a priority when an emergency occurs. Getting to these valves will allow you to prevent leaks and reduce potential damage. It's recommended that you assign that specific duty to a specific board member or a person in the community. And then it's also important for that to keep a copy of your plot map in your documents so you have that handy. Another part of the critical part of the emergency plan is the evacuation plan. The evacuation plan should consist of guidelines and a map for the evacuation so people know where to go. And we'll talk a little bit more about evacuation routes later on in the book. You'll also want to make sure your plan contains standard procedures for various circumstances. For example, if the utilities shut off, what should the residents do? What if some buildings or homes become condemned? You're going to have to identify all possible disaster outcomes and then try to outline steps that your association and residents should take in the event of each one. Emergencies, of course, can happen at any moment, so you want to make sure you have all of those essential documents with you in one place. The board should consider storing those important documents in a cloud service, some sort of a website-based service, and also ensure that more than one person in your association has access to those documents, because you never know what someone's personal situation is going to be in an emergency, so you want to have multiple people there with access. And of course, some of the most crucial documents you're going to want to have are your insurance policies. Those are really important. And make sure you include instructions on how to handle the claims, as well as the contact information for your insurance provider. A list of all essential contact information should also make it into your emergency kit. This list should include the contact details for all board members, your CAM, your attorney, your insurance provider, as well as any vendors or contractors that you anticipate you'd be working with. You should also have all of the emergency contact information for your residents on hand. And definitely, as some of the other folks here have mentioned, you want to strongly encourage your residents to inform you if they plan to stay or go during the storm. In the event of a disaster that results in scattered debris, which happens often, you're going to want to know how to handle that and have a plan for that, which includes instructions for the debris management and the removal. And that's also something Shirley will talk to us about a little bit later on. Lastly, as far as my part here is concerned, apart from planning all of the phases of the emergency pre and during, you should also account for recovery procedures post-emergency. First, you'll want to make sure everyone in your community is safe and or accounted for, and this can be achieved by conducting a wellness check for each resident by referring again to that emergency contact list where hopefully they've told you if they're going to stay or go. Then you should move on to evaluate the damage in your neighborhood. You may need the help of professionals to help you inspect and evaluate the level of damage. But you're going to want to make sure you identify who those professionals are and the best way to reach them. And then, of course, one of the most important things in all of this in documenting damage is pictures, pictures, pictures. The more pictures you take there, the better. You should also take into account that some disasters may render your homes inhabitable. So make sure residents, in order to make sure they return to their homes, you may need to talk to the local authorities and safety professionals. And during this time, your association is going to need to ask the residents for cooperation and understanding, as they may not be able to immediately return to their homes due to safety concerns. And now, keep in mind, all associations are different. You all have different needs. This is definitely not a one-size-fits-all plan. We do have a template, a draft of a plan that's located in the back of the book that you can use as a starting point. However, if your association requires further guidance or resources in creating an individual plan, if you would reach out to Miss Mary Ann Meeker here, she will arrange to meet with you one-on-one and help you craft a plan that fits your association's individual needs. She did that last year, and I think that was very successful for several associations, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Deb.
Good morning. Did you know that when there is a state of emergency, the board is granted emergency powers? Anyone know the last time the emergency powers were enacted? COVID, the state of Florida granted emergency powers to condominiums and homeowners associations. Just thought I'd throw that in there. The authority for the homeowners association and condominiums to enforce the rules and regulations is rooted in statutory authority. Chapter 720 of the Florida statutes empowers and controls the ability of homeowners associations to enforce their rules in Florida, whereas Chapter 718 of the Florida statutes empowers and controls the ability of the condominiums to enforce their rules. When the emergency powers are enacted, they allow you to conduct board meetings via telephone, real-time, video conferencing, and I think some of you remember, because everything was shut down, there were quite a few of the video conferencing. So it allows you to continue doing your business. It also allows you that if your regular board is not there, that you can actually create a board of someone that is here. If you had a disaster such as we just saw on the video, you would be allowed to reorganize your board via telephone or anything like that. So anyway, that does that. Based on the advice of emergency management officials or public health officials, or upon the advice of licensed professionals retained by or otherwise available to the board, determine whether the condominium or any portion can be safely inhabited, accessed, or occupied. So you need to mitigate further damage, injury, taking action for the removal of debris and prevent or mitigate the spread of fungus or other contagion, and mold and mildew. So removing things from the property, even though the owners are not there, to preserve the condominium is allowable during this, which is one of your powers. You can contract on behalf of any unit owner for items or services the owners are otherwise individually responsible for. So these are all things that are emergency powers that are offered to the board. And as such, it should be noted that emergency powers of an HOA or COA are limited, and the extent of which an HOA or COA can exercise these are always dependent on its governing documents, state law, and the nature of the emergency. So not every emergency would allow these powers. Boards should also take into account that any emergency powers utilized by an HOA or COA, board must be exercised in a manner consistent with the board's fiduciary duty to the community. An association board should be careful to balance its obligation to protect and look to the best interests of the community along with the limitations of its authorities. What should residents expect from their association board? Communication in advance of the storm, evacuation monitoring, shelter locations, and other reminders. You also get this information, it's given the county and state, and the local TV stations also remind you of this. Help the board account for your whereabouts. Again, communicate. Although ultimately you are responsible for the safety of yourself, the board is not. First Service will provide a head count checklist. So hopefully that you know where your residents are, if they've left, if they're here, but we would have a checklist for you. To be told to secure your outdoor objects to protect property. The association has the right to throw out any items if you fail to secure them. There should be something in the summertime when people leave for the summertime that they do anyway, not just in an emergency. There should be part of what you do annually, seasonally, or whenever people are out of town for a while. The damage will be addressed as soon as possible. The association will follow proper procedures with First Service regarding damages. The association should designate a board member or POC to act as a disaster point of contact in times of emergency and instruct residents to report all damages in the association to that person. The designated emergency POC should compile all damages into one email and send it to me, Debbie Lauber, at First Service Residential. That way we can distribute this to the CAMs and we can get, if they need to file the claims or move anything, we can get that taken care of. The boards will be financially prudent in the recovery and or restoration of property damage in the potential assessments for losses. The boards are responsible for common area elements only. The board should review their documents and rules to determine procedures for hurricane or storm shutters. Everyone should have this, what you allow when you put them up, rules. If there is no warning anymore, how long do you have to take them down? I've gone through and I've seen in some of the areas where there's no storm, and some of the associations allow the shutters to remain must be all year long, which if their rules allow it, that's fine, but again, it's, even though this is restricted access, it tells everyone that someone's not home. What should the board expect from their residents? Attention to advanced communication regarding the storm. Please pay attention. Self-accountability for whereabouts so board can perform a head count. Cooperation when asked to secure outdoor objects to protect property. To help report damage after the storm to the board and POCs. To evaluate loss assessment insurance coverage to minimize financial burdens. To secure their unit interiors and limit common elements. Take pictures of the unit interiors and keep for post-storm claims. Take pictures of exteriors for post-storm claims. What to expect from First Service. First Service's goal is to protect the lives and health of residents and the employees of Kings Point and protect and minimize damage to residents' property in the event of an emergency. Priorities: to evacuate and account for all employees, to assemble the company's emergency response team for implementation of the response plan as soon as it's safe to do so. Prevent further property damage through mobilizing vendors to begin repairs and estimates as soon as it is safe to do so. File any applicable reports with the Federation of Kings Point. The emergency response procedure: assess the situation, number and types of hazard expected based on experience.
protect residents, employees, contractors, equipment, vital records, and other assets. Coordinate with the insurance company on any possible claims, get the community back up and running. Miscellaneous. In the event that there is a catastrophic loss, First Service has a First Service Emergency Loan Fund available to bridge gaps for repairs while waiting for insurance payments. FEMA, First Service will assist in FEMA aid if applicable. Hurricane shutters, each association board, again, should review their documents and rules to determine procedures for hurricane and storm shutters.
All right, Pete, you're up.
Good morning. First off, I wanted to say thank you for being here. This is year 2 we've done this. What do you guys think of this? A lot of good information, right? Seriously? That's because everybody sitting on this table has taken a lot of time to try to help you out as best as humanly possible. Okay? For those of you that don't know me, I'm your security chief. So occasionally, yes, I do answer phones, but I also do a whole bunch of other things here. Okay? When anybody comes in at the gate, I always say, hey, this is my first day, how am I doing? All right. So, what are the procrastinators saying about this hurricane season? Have you guys heard? Okay, they're calling for a very active season. Okay, that's what we're hearing. When does it begin for us? When do we go live for real? June 1st. We're less than 60 days out, guys. Okay? 3 P's in life to apply here. Please, communication is the key. Sometimes that's the easiest thing to do in the world, but it can be the hardest thing. You need to communicate with your associations. You've got 114 here, right? 5,600 homes, just about. 10,000 plus residents. I can do stats in my head. All right. We're all in this together. Try to do the best we can. God forbid we have to deal with this. I work very closely with Mr. Merritt, Deputy Merritt. You get a lot of guys, and I also work with everybody else here. I have 40 officers for the 2 access points that we basically are talking about. Okay. That controls all the roads in here. As soon as we can, and it's safe to do so, at first light, the day after an event, we will get on site and I'll get the guidance from Deputy Merritt. Trust me, I take this very seriously. I've been here 4 years. Okay? So the hurricane season, how many total storms are they projecting this year? 23. 23. Okay. The average? What's our average every year? 14. Okay. Hurricanes, how many are they predicting this year? 11. The average is 7. How many Cat 3 and above storms are they predicting us to have this year? 5. The average is 3. Take it for what it's worth. Everybody's pretty much doing the same thing. Okay? So, what to expect from Best in Security? Your time is your most valuable commodity. In the few minutes that I have, I'm not going to be able to get you guys ready. That's what all of this is for. So, we have a lot of people that have a lot of really good things to put out that may go a little bit over their time, so I'm going to give back some of my time, okay, so they can have it. In the event of our natural disaster, Vesta will close and secure the land trust properties, including the pools, clubhouses, and recreational areas as directed by the Federation Board. Gatehouse security will remain in place until when? When will it remain in place till? No. The Deputy Mayor says, Pete, they're out of here. Okay? We stopped patrolling at 35. Okay? Well, when Deputy Mayor says, Pete, you gotta go. You know, safety first, guys. Okay? So, with that also being said, after the event has ended, representatives of Vesta and other local authorities will assess the damage to the land trust properties in partnership with the Federation Board and open the amenities when? When it's safe to do so. We won't know what we're dealing with until we can see it first light and get out and assess it. Okay? Please understand, we know you guys like this kind of stuff. We have a lot going on. But we will get everything up and running as soon as humanly possible, including manning the gates. Muy importante, very important, that we get a body out there as soon as it's safe to do so, right? Trust me, I will do that. Whether it's myself, my ops boss, or one of my officers, okay? All right. With that, Ms. Shana, are relinquish the rest of my time.
Okay, so on to the master and what you can expect from the master board. So the Master Association's goal as far as disaster preparedness is to help minimize safety and monetary risk for the entire community, mainly in regards to the infrastructure and the roadways. We do conduct regular inspections of our roads, bridges, drainage structures, and landscaping to help identify and mitigate any potential safety hazards well in advance of the storm. For example, right now we're trying to get on the schedule with our landscaper sometime in May so that by the start of the season on June 1st, all of our trees are nice and trimmed, so any of those weak branches that may have been a hazard would already be taken care of before the start of the season. We also provide designated staging areas throughout the property for the section landscapers, as well as the restoration vendors, and that's for them to use for all of their landscape and construction debris during the cleanup. We would also provide designated staging areas for FEMA if that was applicable. And then of course, we will assist local officials and FEMA as needed. Once a hurricane watch is issued, we immediately go out for a visual inspection of the property. At that time, if there are any fallen branches or debris, we make sure those are picked up. Any loose articles or debris are removed from the lake outfalls. If there happen to be any obstructions in the storm drains along the master roadways, we will get those cleared out. And then also we will secure our irrigation yard and turn off all of our pumps and controllers, and that's just to protect the system during the storm. Now, after the storm, we have myself and the field manager that are both will be readily available as soon as we can get here, as soon as it's safe. Again, I'm in contact with Jeff. I was last year to find out when it was safe to get on the road. I'm just up the street in Riverview, so not too far, but with traffic lights and all of that, we want to make sure it's safe. But as soon as it is, I'll be here along with our field manager, Denny, who most of you know. We'll be here right after the storm, and immediately we'll start to assess the damage and cleanup. We also have contracted with our landscaper, Russell Landscaping, for hurricane preparedness, and what that means is that they don't have to wait for any authority or any requests to come out here. They will be on standby just like Denny and myself. As soon as it's safe to get out here, they will immediately be out here and start clearing the roads. That has proven very effective. When we had Ian, we actually had a big tree that was down and blocking Kings Boulevard. And before I even got here, our landscaper was here and had cleared the road already. So that's our main goal, is just to be as swift as we can in coming in and getting those roads cleared. We have a similar contract with our engineering folks that take care of our drainage structures for priority services, because after a storm, that's a field where those guys get booked up very quickly. But because of the business that we do with them here in Kings Point, we do have an agreement for priority, so our community would, essentially be their first stop. And then, of course, our role in all of this, the Master will continue to sponsor the Disaster Planning Committee and work with the Federation and the other various entities on a comprehensive plan for the whole community. As we move forward from year to year, we just hope to continue to build on the progress that we've made, and we'll just keep getting stronger every year. All right, and next up it is Miss Shirley.
Hold on 1 second, because you mentioned it. So just so you know, and just for your edification, Greater Sun City Center's primary FEMA drop, if we need it, if it's called in, is the Methodist Church, right there on Del Webb West. So that's where tarps and food and water and ice and all that will be dropped by FEMA. If we need it, that's our primary FEMA drop point.
Thank you.
Good morning. My voice is kind of giving out, so if I change in the middle of this, then Jim Gundry will take over for me. For the Federation, we budgeted $175,000 for the cleanup of associations' natural debris cleanup due to a named storm. Once that money's spent, it's gone. It doesn't get refurbished for the rest of the year. The Federation contracts with 4 landscapers. I'm pretty sure you know who they are, but I'll list them. Down to Earth, Artistry, Brightview, and Russell's. They are in the process of working with those to come up with a structure payment per hour. That has not been completed yet. The cost of the tree service is all on you. It's all the association's responsibility. If there's widespread damage, partially will be given first to excess safety, structural damage mitigation. Associations may be expected to adopt an emergency spending policy, granting first service the ability to remove funds and pay bills for this cleanup. That's entirely up to your board to decide. Associations should consider delegating authority to first service to authorize, it says Brown's Tree Service, as of April 1st, they're no longer here. It is now Monster Tree Service, as of April 1st. To remove critical downed branches and trees from each association. I was lucky, I only got 1 page.
All right, Brian is up next.
Thank you, Shauna. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to stand up here to use this illustration a little bit. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Brian Burns, Senior Vice President at USI Insurance Services. We are your insurance advocate. A lot of your HOA fees go to the Federation to pay for a master property policy, which we handle and place for you on an annual basis with Heritage Insurance. Who knows, I'm going to dovetail off of Pete a little bit, who knows when the last major storm was to hit Tampa Bay? It was over 100 years, it was 1921, right? And so in the insurance industry, when I'm talking to carriers like Heritage and other partners, they always use a 100-year storm as an example, as a catastrophe, right? And so our time is up, right, to have that heart attack after 100 plus years. And I know today's a lot of doom and gloom, but that's part of life that we have to talk about. And so the things in that video were accurate. I'm going to touch on the page here, and then I'm going to touch on a couple real life stories that we're dealing with in Fort Myers and Naples currently. So if you look on the page 10 there, the insurance process. So we're going to be here right after the storm. We were here the day after Ian hit. Mariana and Sean and I were here. I'll be here if there's a storm. And we're going to be assessing the situation. Every one of your policies has a 5% hurricane deductible on it. A lot of people think that's 5% of the loss. That's not accurate. It's 5% of your building value. So for instance, you have $1 million building, the insurance isn't going to pay until you reach $51,000 because you're responsible for the first $50,000. So if any of you have questions about what your specific deductibles are, you can either look at your policies and those values and take 5%, or call me and we can walk through those individually based on your community. So moving on to the HO6 policy, they're talking about loss assessment, okay? Loss assessment is something that's included in your unit owner's policy. So those of you that have an HO6 or a unit owner's policy automatically have $2,000 of loss assessment included in that policy. You are not expected to pay cash for the deductibles that you have on your policy. A lot of that funding for those deductibles are going to come through the loss assessment mechanism on your HO6 policy. Next month, Debbie and her team are going to send out, as we do every year, a notification that educates every unit owner on what your maximum loss assessment could be for each unit owner for their portion of their deductible, okay? Let's say Oxford 2, that number might be $7,500, okay? So that number is higher than the $2,000 that's included in the HO6 policy. What each unit owner can do, if they're educated and pay attention, is take that loss assessment notice to their individual insurance agent and say, increase my loss assessment on my individual policy up from $2,000 to maybe $10,000 or maybe $5,000, okay? So that way when Hurricane Meeker comes through Tampa Bay and everyone gets assessed their deductibles, and you as an association levy the unit owners for their portion of their deductible, they can turn around and get insurance from that, from their individual HO6 policy. So it's a little bit of it takes a lot of talking around to kind of get that, and we can have some Q&A after this, and please come up to me if you have any questions, but those notifications will go out in May. So those are those two items. A couple other things. At the bottom of the page, if you could scroll down a little bit, Sean, if you're the one driving, you know, we're going to be here after a loss, but Brian Burns and Heritage aren't going to be able to fix repairs, right? We're not going to show up with a truck full of tools to get working. And so really, some of the most critical people at the bottom of page 10 are the restoration people, or the restoration contractors, okay? The insurance aside, okay, regardless of what insurance is paying, you're going to need to have a quality contractor to repair your work. And First Service works closely with these folks here, but I don't know if you've read about some of the horror stories, thankfully none of our clients, but down in Fort Myers, there were some communities that hired some non-reputable contractors and ended up installing, you know, shoddy drywall, and it wasn't screwed in properly, and so now they have to go back and redo everything, and insurance doesn't pay twice. And so it's very important that, you know, the insurance money will come, we can cut checks, but unless you have the quality people there to do the work, it doesn't matter how much money you have. And so they are a critical, crucial element. So I would encourage you guys to come to the May 1st symposium, where all those restoration contractors will be here, so you can create a personal relationship with them. Lastly, it's not a race to get your building, you know, built back as quickly as possible. You want to make sure that you do it properly and qualified. You have to get permits. I'm going down to Naples tomorrow, North Naples, to see some clients. There are still buildings down in Naples 2+ years later that have the first 2 floors of their buildings down to the studs, okay? And this is due for a myriad of reasons. Dissension in the boards, they couldn't get permits, they didn't have a qualified contractor. And so it's important for everyone to know that if we have a massive storm, the process is gonna take a long time. You should have a plan in place as to where you could go as a backup, or where the residents could go as an alternative, because you can have a check for $7 million, but if it takes 6 months to get a permit and another 6 months to order your windows, nothing is going to happen. And so it's a real concern, and we see it now, and people think that, you know, insurance carriers fly in on helicopters and start writing checks. And we're not coming in on a helicopter, I'll come into my truck, but there's a lot more complexity to it when you get into a massive project with permitting and general contractors and boards. And I know I'm rambling on here, but one last thing is, you know, you see boards with their management company, but all of a sudden you become project managers of multi-million-dollar reconstruction jobs. And so you may have joined the board because you wanted to, you know, do a couple of little things different here in the community. But if we get hit by a storm, this is a huge responsibility that you guys have, and the work that has to be put in. And so I applaud the Disaster Planning Committee for helping to educate the community. Everybody's put a lot of work in, and you guys have a big responsibility on your shoulders in terms of your role with the community and the residents. And so thank you for taking time to learn today.
All right, next up we have Mr. Rob Davies. He is the chair of our pond committee, but we asked him to speak on this next section because it pertains to flooding, and he has become quite the expert. So please educate us.
Okay, thank you. Nice to see such a crowd today, too. In your booklets, you've got something about evacuations and flood zones. You want to take a look at that in terms of flood zones or areas to be ordered to evacuate during a hurricane. I would add to that, they may be areas to evacuate in a heavy rain event. As we've seen in Florida recently, we've had several heavy rain events that might cause you to evacuate. And generally, you have a warning with a hurricane coming, but with a heavy rain event, you don't. So we'll talk a little bit about flooding as we get into that. Whereas the definition for flood zones talk more about, gee, should you have insurance, flood insurance, and basically the original figure I looked at that was is there a 0.26 chance that you will flood during the 30 years of your mortgage? And that was a FEMA type of thing. So we need to think about evacuation zones here, and I'll get into that a little bit more in terms of being prepared in case there is a flooding situation, and know if you should evacuate and where you should go. Obviously, you should go to higher ground. And certainly check your property to see if you need flood insurance. On page 12, there's a map of Kings Point. A poor map, but what that shows is that part of Kings Point is in Zone D for evacuation, and the rest of it is in Zone A. E and D. So what you'll hear during a hurricane warning is that everybody in Zone D needs to move out. I mean, basically what we hear is that the people down in Ruskin need to move out. It's kind of tapered depending on where that storm is actually coming from. So the things that we're facing is how much rainfall is coming down, how much that rainfall is coming our way, how saturated the ground is, and how much storm surge we have. Because the more storm surge we have, you get a point where the amount of water coming up the river is meeting the amount of water going down the river, and that makes it more complicated. You can kind of see these the next page, the higher risk areas along Cypress Creek. And at this point, we'll pop over to, I did a little presentation that Shauna will pull up. If we can pull up the what is watershed, please. So our watershed is a drainage basin. It's an area of land surface from which water flows. And watersheds are naturally separated from adjacent basins. And we have the Cypress Creek watershed. It's 32.6 square miles, 88% lies in Hillsborough County. And what's in the county is 28 square miles. And it contains 69 named lakes, ponds, 4 named rivers and canals, and none of the Kings Point up to 100 ponds are in that data. And it flows through Cypress Creek. It flows under the Kings Boulevard Bridge. A tributary enters behind Fairfield via a drainage way that comes from CVS, Sun City Plaza, the Towers, and New Bedford loop over in Pebble Beach, and it enters Manatee River. As I said, the storm surge and incoming tides increase the depth of the river, flow down the creek, so what's flowing through our property can be slowed down or stopped, which could increase flooding possibilities. It can occur anytime that there's a high rain event, so it's not necessarily a hurricane. We're getting more and more storms that are having high rainfall events. And it's when the stormwater systems are overwhelmed by the ground saturation and the water's got no place to go. And it can be for a short or long-term period. When we had the Emergency Access Gate Committee, we started looking at the flooding situation in here. And one of the engineers at Southwest Florida Water Management said water could be around anywhere up to 3 days. So that was kind of stark realization. And like I said, evacuations are generally not talked about for high rain events because they don't know that it's happening. You know, we get a storm that comes in and all of a sudden it sits on top of us for a while. We don't know that's going to happen. So the flood maps are based on 100-year projections, as Brian said. Those 100-year projections are more and more inaccurate. It's more like 500 and 1,000-year flood events are going on. A 100-year flood is 12 inches of rain in 24 hours. FEMA works very closely with our local agencies, and they work very closely with Hillsborough County Hillsborough County has a flood office, and we have worked with some of the folks in the flood office to get data and understanding of how things are working in the county. So the threats I see to Kings Point is the upstream development of Cypress Creek watershed. Everybody knows what's happened on 19th Avenue over the past 8 or 10 years. And the expansion of 301 and 674, increased rainfall, increased tropical storms, storm surge forming humanity, and the age of our stormwater system. Our stormwater system within Kings Point is in good shape, but it needs constant monitoring and make sure we're keeping it up to date and have no blockages, no problems with any of the pipes. All of the outflow weirs are operating well. And one of my big concerns is when you think of 301, 301 was a 2-lane highway 5 years ago. Now it's a 6-lane highway. Where's all that water going? And if you look around, you don't see any retention or detention ponds that were built during that construction period. So that water will flow laterally toward us. And that's something we're going to continue to explore as to what is that impact on us at the bottom of our watershed. And if we could blow this map up a little bit, Shauna, near the top. If you take a look, well, maybe you can see it anyhow. If you look at Gloucester Boulevard, can everybody figure out where Gloucester Boulevard is? Okay. If you look at the end of Gloucester Boulevard, you'll see Glenmore underwater, and you'll see part of Canterbury underwater, and you'll see the end of Gloucester Boulevard underwater. And according to the flood maps, the end of Gloucester Boulevard will have 1.5 to 3 foot waves during a hurricane. If you look in the Hammersmith area, you'll see that there's a lot of flooding in the Hammersmith area. And that whole area from 26th Street, where Pond 1 comes in, all around the interchange of Route 674 is underwater. You'll see, if you follow Kings Boulevard down Gloucester, the end of Gloucester Boulevard and Kings Boulevard is flooded by Pond 38, where all the lily pads are in bloom right now. Canterbury is pretty much underwater, and the dog park is underwater. Cypress Creek is on the right, between Andover and Bedford, and you'll see that there's a fair amount of flooding there and flooding near the end of Cambridge Trail. So that's what a 100-year flood looks like here. So flooding is a possibility, and hopefully things will stay the same way they are, and all the storms will go north of us or south of us. And I think that's because Chico's got that big heat sink making the storms go around it. But suffice it to say, we can be flooded. It's a possibility, and we need to prepare for it. Also, if you look at 26th Street is underwater by the South Gate and proceeding up. And then, of course, Little Manatee State Park will flood up to the area in the south end of the property. And this just shows the flood zones again. We don't need to look at that. This will probably be up on our website. This a couple from Glenmore took a video of Cypress Creek, and there was 8 inches of rain in 12 hours. And this is a bridge behind KPW, and the water was 2 feet under that bridge. Normally, if you look at Cypress Creek under that bridge, it's just a little puddling stream on the bottom. So we do have flooding risk here. We should be prepared as a possibility. I know that Mike generally brings his inflatable beach toy with him. I keep an inflatable stand-up paddleboard, just in case. What are we doing? The Master Association formed the Emergency Exit Committee, and a number of recommendations and improvements came out of that. We expanded the Pond Committee to evaluate and spend more time looking at our existing stormwater system And we're increasing the inspection and monthly documentation of all of our detention ponds and our stormwater systems, and contracting for more studies to analyze our stormwater management system's impact, particularly on the Kings Boulevard Bridge, and increasing drainage way activities. That Cypress Creek and the drainage way behind Fairfield need trimming to make sure that there's no blockages in that area, so we're working on that and looking at a 5-year plan to deal with all aspects of our stormwater management system. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Next up, we have Mike Bardell, Chief of the Sun City Center Emergency Squad.
Good morning. Everybody hear me? I have such a soft voice. But the most riveting news I've heard so far this morning is if we get a hurricane, I should not expect Brian Burns to show up in his bib overalls with his toolbox. So that was quite enlightening for me. But I have about 2 hours worth of material, but I'm told I can't take that long. So I'm going to go over it in about a couple of minutes for you. I don't believe in reading information. It's put up on the board for you. I'm just going to hit some highlights. But one of the most important things when you get a hurricane, let's go back to 2004. Unfortunately, I have been here that long. 2004, Hurricane Charlie was coming up. All forecasts showed it to hit Tampa Bay and to come up the mouth of Tampa Bay and going to dump about 16 feet of water on downtown Tampa. And it was going to back up all the tributaries, the Alafaya, the Little Manatee River, all of this stuff was going to be backed up. It was going to be a huge event. It ended up being a very catastrophic deal. And everybody was getting real nervous in Tampa Bay. But you don't have to look too far, but if you go down the railroad tracks, around the railroad tracks, on 41 up and down, you will see that there's a sign up there that shows you where 16 feet of water would be. And it's a very discouraging feat to look at that. It's quite high up there. That storm was going to come into Tampa Bay, and it didn't. It went into Fort Myers Beach, and did a lot of devastation there for many, many years. Why did that happen? Because the storms don't get Bay News 9. They don't pay attention to this stuff. It's all a forecast of where things are going. People have worked for years to try and give you more advanced warnings about when something is going to come. When you're getting a watch, that means that they want you to watch in this area for what it's going to be within the next 48 hours, that a hurricane is possible. If you go to a warning system that tells you within 36 hours, you're looking for one to really expect it to hit. So that's one of the things. And then the other one is the category which it comes in. You hear people that have been around here for a few years that will tell you, oh, it's only a category 1. You don't have to worry about that. That's nothing. That's only 75 miles an hour. If you've ever been in a 75 miles an hour wind, you will find out you cannot stand up and walk erect. It's very thick. And then you have to worry about the flying debris. You will not fare well if a shingle were to hit you, or any one of those garden gnomes that we have floating around in Kings Point. They become projectiles. So all of this stuff is very damaging, and even a minor storm, if you're in the middle of it, can cause a lot. The other unknown about it is tornadoes. Tornadoes takes the bridge off of everything. There is no guarantees for any of that. So you really want to hope you miss everything, not just a category 1 or category 3. But if you hear it's a category 3 above, then put on your seatbelt. The next thing is, should you stay or should you go? It's pretty simple. It's what is your tolerance to being uncomfortable? If you get a large storm here, you're probably not going to have electricity, which means you're not going to have air conditioning. You're not going to have Facebook. You're not going to have a whole lot of the creature comforts that you are here. You may have to be in your home for several days that's got rain coming through it into your living room. This is the kind of stuff. If you have health concerns, these are areas that you may want to leave. But there are so many decisions that have to be made on this thing, on a storm when you come in. So if you can just make the one decision, should you stay or should you go? I can tell you that my wife and I have decided many years ago, because of what we do in the community, that we will not be leaving, even if it's a Category 5. But that's something we do, but you have to base your own knowledge on that. We've been through severe storms before, so we think we have some knowledge on that particular endeavor. But you need to do, if you're gonna leave early. If you wait till 24 hours before an event, you've already waited too long. And you do not want to get stuck on I-75 out there with all of the other people that were like-minded like you, and then you got a jam up of traffic. You don't want to take a storm in that traffic. And I assure you, that's what it'll be like. You also need to make arrangements with hotels. If there's a significant storm that comes through here, there probably won't be a hotel room in Florida. You will have to go deep into Georgia to get a hotel room. Everybody flocks to Orlando, and every time they flock to Orlando, Orlando ended up with a storm. So you got to kind of be careful about where you're heading to, but you want to make sure that you go early. If you're going to stay, then you need to prepare. You need to have the food, you need to have the lights, you need to have the batteries. But there will be more information on that kind of stuff to do. After the storm, the biggest thing that people want to do is they want to get out and look at the damage of what, oh, I didn't get hit, let me find out how much damage there is around. That is a problem, because you become part of the problem. If there's a down power line, you could then be a casualty. And the emergency squad isn't going to come get you until they cut off the power. So this is a big thing. Why not let the people resist the urge to go out and do it? Let the people do the job that they are supposed to do. The sheriff's office will be out there, security patrol will be out there, Kings Point security will be out there, they will be assessing all the damage. They will in turn tell the emergency squad, and then I will send crews out. But even I don't go out into that until I'm called or until I know that the area is safe for my crews to go out into. But that's a real important endeavor. If you just do that one thing, that would lead a lot of people to get less hurt. And then you have, like as Deputy Mary was saying, people don't follow stoplights as it is around here. If they're not working, it's a real problem. So we need to make sure that we're safe at all, and we want to make sure that we can get through the storm, we can get it all repaired, and have no fatalities or no injuries if possible. Other important things to know would be generators. There's a lot of people that have generators and they want to fire them up. Don't fire them up in your garage. They got to be in an open area, because otherwise the carbon monoxide will get into your home, and then we will be rendering assistance to you when you are unconscious. And hopefully it's not too late. Make sure it's in an open air position. Lift station. This is a favorite one for me, because it really is a real health hazard. If we lose power, if you haven't noticed, Florida is one of the flattest areas in the states. It's one of the only states where an anthill can be a terrain feature. So crap rolls downhill. In Florida, it's flat. So you have lift stations that lift all that feces up and then let it down and run to another one. It's a series to get it to the station. Now we have a station right there at 75 and 674. But how long do you think it takes to get down there, and how deep would that hole have to be? So they have a number of lift stations. If the electricity is not working, but you will probably still have water. So people are still going to use the bathroom as much as possible, because you've got nothing else to do, so going to the bathroom is a real pastime. So what happens is, all of this stuff goes down into the lift station, but it's not moving. So guess what? It backs up into the pipes. It will come to your home, and will start coming up. I can assure you that if it comes up into my home, there is not enough bleach in Sun City for my wife to clean. So, and I'm sure that several of you are like that too. So the way you do it is resist it. Keep it in the bowl as long as possible. Don't flush any more than you absolutely have to. Power will hopefully only be out a few hours, maybe a couple of days. But that would just create a real problem for bacteria and everything else. We don't want that kind of an issue. Sandbags are a real nice idea. The problem is you have to fill your own sandbags, and I don't think there are a lot of us that are too anxious about filling sandbags. There was a product that was put on the market a couple of years ago. I will see if I can't find out where that can be purchased. But this sandbag, you can fold it up, put it in your garage. It's very thin, but when water hits it, it activates and fills up with water. And therefore, that becomes your barrier. I think it's a real good idea. And then once it dries out, you can stack it up and put it back in your garage. I like that idea rather than filling sandbags personally. Okay, that's all I have. I don't think I took 2 hours, but.
Thanks, Mike. We are back to Miss Marianne.
I'm going to talk about shelters. That's supposed to be designated shelters in the county, and those are where people can go. How do you go there? They're for a temporary shelter. There are general population. There's a pet-friendly shelter and special needs shelter, okay? And I laugh because when Jeff is here and he talks about shelters, he always says, they're not a hotel. You are going to be in about a 3 by 3 foot area. You are going to be, as a general population, you're going to be in with everybody else. And you're going to have to use a common bathroom. You're not going to have your own bathroom. And it can be really stressful, okay? Now, we will have the list of the actual shelters, the pet-friendly one, the special needs, and the general population. There is actually a copy in your guide that you have, in your handbook that you have. There's a copy of the shelter form. If you need to go to one of these shelters, you need to complete the form well before the hurricane season. Get it done. It has to go to the physician, and you have to register it with the county so that it's there already. Historically, we've had shelters actually fill up, and people had to go a lot farther outside our county to get a shelter. So it may not always have air conditioning. We're not sure of those kinds of things, and I don't want to discourage you, but they are not like being in a hotel, believe me. The special needs shelters are for residents with medical conditions that may require use of special equipment. That would be oxygen. They may need dialysis, and there may be some physical, cognitive, or medical conditions that may require assistance from the medical professionals. That is for a special needs shelter. They will not be providing continuous bedside help. They will be there probably as they can get in, and they are going to have to go to other shelters too. So it's not like you're going to have somebody there constantly to monitor your personal situation. I don't want to be negative, but I want to say to you, we don't want to create a scenario that people say, well, I thought I could go to a shelter and then get there and not be happy with what the shelter provides for you. I know that if you can remember way back when they had the horrible hurricane in New Orleans, and the shelters that were there, they would talk about those. It's certainly in much better shape now. We know that we have, I think at last I heard was 11 shelters. Usually, oftentimes they're in a school, and but we will make sure those are published. And if members of your community actually need applications for shelters, you can copy what you have in that handbook. Okay. We will be sending out that list of the shelters that are available on the kpmaster.com website and disaster planning. Okay?
All right, so how many of you out here have pets? So I think our next speaker may be our most popular, because if you're like me, I think a lot of us care more about our animal friends than humans sometimes. But if Dr. Sandy.
Hey, everybody hear me okay? Okay. So, yeah, I'm a licensed veterinarian. I've been in Florida licensed since 1986 and in Florida residency since 74, I believe, off and on. And I've seen all the changes, and I'm curious about, she asked how many have pets. How many of you do not have special responsibility directly for, or have a friend or a family member that you're concerned about who has pets? Raise your hand if you're not, and if you're in that category where you're not responsible. Okay, so we have a big problem here, concerns. So, so is that my first slide? No, can we go to the first slide? No, that's the end of the. Can we go to the first slide? Keep going up. That's the end of the presentation. Keep going up. No, that's wrong way. Well, while she's trying to get to the first slide, we have hurricanes here are obviously a problem. What I would suggest for people who have communities that are pet friendly, that you get with either the dog club or some mechanism of labeling, because people are likely to stay in place if they have their pets or not evacuate. So maybe you have a way of identifying who's staying and how many pets they have, dogs, cats, etc. So you kind of have a heads up when you're checking on things afterwards. I'm not sure what's happening with the presentation, but what we discovered through some statistics is that about 80% of the population will not leave their pets behind. And that of those, they won't go to a shelter where they're going to be separated from their pets. So it's a huge problem. So it's a big concern. So they're likely to either stay or they're likely to go. And if they go, they have to make a decision about that really early, because the shelter information that we're getting is not very good, not very complete. And after Katrina, there was a federal law that was passed that you must have at least some information about where people can go with their pets. The problem with that is there is no requirement for them to either maintain that status pet friendly. They can change it at any time. If it's a private commercial property, they're not mandated to do that. And the cost per pet, per night, can be up to $25 a piece. So when you start adding that up, if you've got a couple of pets and you're going to be there for a couple of weeks, if there's availability, then you can see the problem. So we want people to start to identify that early. The special needs that your pets may have. They've got medicines, they need a medical record, they might need rabies vaccination proof. I am told that the shelters will not turn you away if your pet is not current on rabies. That's fine. But you never know what they're going to ask for, or especially on private properties. So I can tell you that they're going to fill it very quickly. So you make your decisions early to go with your pet, and you prepare to have, you're going to have restraint devices such as cages, leashes, anything that you're going to need to travel with them. Food, water, if you're going to stay in place, you're going to need 2 weeks worth of water. You're going to need their medications that they have, and medical records. So this is the CDC paper that kind of summarizes all of that. that I just stated. The one thing that's really not brought out here is your pets are going to be under stress. And there are some over-the-counter products that you can buy that would address that. Some of them are capsule form, some of them are in liquid form, some of them are in tablet form, and some of them are spray for the environment. Those are the easiest. They can be specific. Cat de-stressor is called Feloy, F-E-L like feline, and the dog one can be called Thunder Ease or Zilkeen or Thunder Ease or Adaptil is another name for it. So spray for the environment that would take some of the edge off of traveling with your pet. So basically, so we're getting through the slides. Next slide. I think, yeah, so all the restraint devices and things that you might need to take care of your pet, litter, garbage can, things like that, might not necessarily think of for yourself. Whether you're staying in place or whether you're moving, you're still going to need these things. Next slide. I think we covered the information already. This is what I was talking about the de-stressor products that you can buy. Next slide. Just have everything packaged and ready to go and don't count on your memory. Plan it all ahead of time. But my message to you really is plan early. If you've got a pet, find a place to go that is not in Florida preferably, with a friend or a family preferably. You don't want to end up in those shelters, and most of the people, I mean, we're talking 80–90% of pet owners will not go to shelter if they cannot be with their pets. And right now, the pet-friendly shelters do not allow you to be with your pet. They're in a separate room. You can see them once or twice a day, and that's it. It's not acceptable to most pet owners. So with that said, that's pretty much my message. Know where the people are staying that have their pets. Know if they evacuate, which is a good idea that we've already talked about. And have some of these specialty things, items, if you're taking your pet with you. Or staying. Thank you.
All right, back to you real quick, Marianne.
Shauna's going to put up, this is the Hillsborough County Alert System. And it's actually, what you do is you go out and you go on this, the system she has up there, and you can sign up to get these alerts whenever they come out from the county. I signed up and it's very helpful. It tells you what's going on, when it's going on, and gives you a certain sense of security that you're getting information for as long as you have systems to work. So I would definitely go out there and sign up for that alert system, okay?
All right, and now we have Eileen with the Radio Club.
You have a slide there for me? Okay. The disaster radio, can you hear me? Yeah. The disaster radio service is a volunteer service of the Kings Point Amateur Radio Club. We've been in service for about 4 years, and we now have 517 resident radios out in the community. Next slide. So what is it? DRS provides a way for residents to call for help if the cell phones are down and the internet is down. Next slide. And who does it serve? It serves all residents of Sun City Center. So not just Kings Point, but also Sun City. This is a map of Sun City Center, and the blue dots represent residents' homes where they have a DRS radio. You can see most of them are in the Kings Point area, although we do service all of the city. And the red dots are listening stations who will relay a message for a resident to the Kings Point Amateur Radio Club room, where the radio is. Next slide. So this is a resident calling from his home for help because the cell phones are down. These are small handheld radios. They're low cost, $15. They're pretty robust, they're reliable, they're rechargeable, but they have a short range. range of 1 to 2 miles. So this resident is calling for help. This is a listening station. That's me. I'm Delta listening station. We have about 12 of them. And they're in their homes with their ham radios and their ham radio license operators, but they use a GMRS radio to hear that resident and to relay that information to the Kings Point Radio Club, which is often further than he can reach with that little handheld. Next slide. And then that KP ARC receives that relay from the listener, and they call the Sun City Center Emergency Squad. And that's something that we do every week. On Wednesdays we practice, and it's end-to-end. The residents call in, the listeners relay their messages to the Kings Point Radio Club, and the Radio Club checks every week to make sure that we can reach the squad. Next slide. Here's our dispatchers receiving the radio call and sending the ambulance. Next slide. And there it goes. Next slide. So we practice, as I said, every Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and we welcome you all to join the program. The residents, the listeners, the radio room, and the squad all make contact every Wednesday at 9 a.m. And last slide. You can get the radio today in the meeting room, which is next to the Radio Club, across from the art room, or any Thursday or Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. in the radio room. And the last slide. And coming soon to Kings Point Disaster Preparedness Program is a new tower to improve emergency communications at the Kings Point community.
Thank you, Eileen. Also, just a note to everybody, in the back of your book, there are a lot of valuable resources that we have there. Some we've mentioned, the shelter forms, the Sample Association Emergency Plan template, crucial contact numbers, and some other vital information. We do wholeheartedly encourage all associations, again, to proactively develop your own plans. And again, if you need assistance, please contact Mary Ann, and she will definitely help you with that there. Also, another reminder, you were all given a couple of copies of this flyer here when you came in. We encourage you to take these, please, and place them on your bulletin boards, share them with your residents. This is kind of your one-stop shop for disaster preparedness in Kings Point. We put a lot of resources here, including the video of today's workshop and anything else that we do. All those resources will be available on kpmaster.com/disaster planning. And then just to wrap things up here, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jim Allen, who is the Master Liaison for the Disaster Planning Committee.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning to aid in bolstering your association's disaster preparedness efforts, and to thank all of the dedicated committee members and consultants for their hard work and dedication in putting all of this together. And of course, a special acknowledgement to Brian for his generous contribution of the donuts, which undoubtedly helped draw such a large crowd today. The Disaster Planning Committee is committed to continuing their efforts and is currently working on a comprehensive response plan, including all entities tailoring to our community's needs. As Mary Ann had mentioned, communicating the Amber Alert type system and to enhance our community safety. We are also broadening our horizons to prepare for a spectrum of disasters, including tornadoes, wildfires, cyber threats, and potential terrorist attacks. Yes, have to be prepared for everything. And then last but not least, and quite important, is that we are evaluating and we have purchased equipment for connecting to the Starlink system of satellites that are orbiting the Earth. We currently have purchased 2 modules for the Starlink system, which, as mentioned, if the cell towers or the internet towers or the internet goes down, we will still have an opportunity to connect to the internet using this device. We have purchased 2 units. One will be fixed at the office area, and the second unit will be a mobile unit, which we can move around the community and will allow our residents to be able to get on the internet for a short period of time to communicate with your family members if necessary. Those plans are being developed as we speak, and we will communicate those out to you as soon as they have been completed. And of course, we are collaborating with the Radio Club to maximize efficiency and reach out with a new tower, as you've heard, and antenna, and our disaster response strategy for management, associations, and the residents. So as you can see, there are many exciting things coming down the road, so please stay tuned. Are there questions? Okay, I see one hand up. You're going to have to either come up here, or we're going to have to come out this so we can hear you.
No.
Very early in the presentation, you
can't hear you. No.
KPW.
We can't hear you.
Who has the question?
I have it right here.
Okay. There you go.
Early in the presentation, you mentioned a radio station for KPW. I was just wondering what the call letters are.
You're talking about some radio?
Yes.
96.3.
Say it again.
96.3. Next. Oh.
Yes, question for Brian. You mentioned some of the restoration contractors, and it looked like you had contracts with all of the COAs, condo associations. I'm just wondering, we're a homeowners association, HOA, would our residents be able to utilize those same contractors? Is there any provision, any special information we'd need to have to be able to do that?
Good question. They would, that decision would be on a homeowner basis. So each residence could make that own decision, but certainly working with contractors that are already here, that we know are already qualified, that are going to be in the community, would be recommended, right? But ultimately, if you have a relationship outside of those services, you have the right to choose that. You just want to make sure that they have one and that it's a reputable company.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, early in the presentation, someone mentioned about water shutoff and location of water shutoffs, and I wasn't sure what specifically shutoffs you were looking to have the responsibility of the associations.
Your unit shut off.
The individual units?
Yes.
Okay. Is that at the street or at the unit itself?
It's at the unit. Sometimes it's outside, sometimes it's in.
Right, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This question's for Rob. I noticed in the big rain event that we had like a month ago, that the creek that you showed in the video, how high it got. And right there, we need mitigation as far as, cutting down some trees and some stuff. I haven't seen any of that happen from the Dole Park all the way down. I was wondering, when is it going to begin?
Well, I can tell you, we're working with the county. Clearing waterways is not an easy task. There's some permissions and things that fall in line there, and we're trying to get all of that sorted out with the county. And we have an attorney assisting us in that as well, because it is an issue, and we do need to clear it all the way, again, from the park down through the Fairfields.
And one of the things we're looking at, it's called a drainage way. And a drainage way, according to the research we've done, is that we need to keep plants, particularly deep-rooted plants in the drainage way to prevent erosion. First of all, and you look at both of our drainage ways, Cypress Creek and the one in Fairfield, there's been quite a bit of erosion. So the plants are good, but what needs to be taken out are the trees, the down trees, and trees that will cause blockages. And that's what the master is working on.
Anyone else?
Can I just tell? Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara, go ahead.
This isn't a question, it's just something that we have done in our community, is if someone is going to be leaving, going to neighbors outside of our own association, we ask them to tape a note to their front door with what their location is and with a contact phone number, so that if we unfortunately have to go in, we know where they're at. So that's just something that we've done.
I would only do that when you are actually in a disaster. Yeah, because you're telling people that you're not there. Yeah. Okay, let me just say the support that this committee's received from the master has been tremendous. Last year, we went to Matt Lachey, and that video was produced by the staff members in the master. So I would like to make sure that people recognize the talents that the Master Association has, and we will be doing another video for this year a little later. In addition to that, you will be getting e-blasts. It will be after the season starts, but you'll get one probably every 2 to 3 weeks. If it's something that you could post on your bulletin board to keep people informed, or send it in an email to your association members, we would greatly appreciate it. And thank you for coming.